The night before my wedding should have been perfect. The final celebration, the last drinks with my closest friends, the night before everything changed for the better. That's what it was supposed to be. Instead, I sat frozen, my breath caught in my throat, my stomach twisting into knots, staring at the phone in my hand. The one that wasn't mine. The one that belonged to my best man. It had been an accident. A mistake. He had left his phone on the bar while he went to grab another round, and when it vibrated, instinct took over. I glanced down, barely thinking, but then I saw the name. Sophia. My fiancée. My future wife. The woman I was supposed to be marrying in less than 24 hours. And the message? It ended everything. One last time before you belong to him forever? The words didn't make sense at first. I stared at them, waiting for my brain to catch up, for reality to shift back into place, but it didn't. My hands clenched around the phone, my pulse hammering in my ears, the air suddenly too thick, too hot. My fiancé, my best man, the two people I trusted most. And this wasn't the first time. The way she worded it, the implication. This had been happening. Not a mistake. Not a single moment of weakness. A secret. A lie. A long-running betrayal. I could feel my body tensing, my breathing turning sharp, fast. My entire chest tightening as a million thoughts crashed into me at once. How long? When did it start? Was it before I proposed? Before we set the date? Did they laugh about me behind my back? Did they meet up while I was working, while I was planning our future, while I was stupidly, blindly in love? My stomach churned, nausea rising. My hands gripping the phone so tightly I thought I might snap it in half. I should have thrown it. I should have smashed it against the bar, stormed out, confronted him the second he walked back over. But I didn't, because I needed more. I exhaled shakily, my fingers moving on their own, scrolling through the messages, each one making my blood run colder, my vision blur with rage. Months. This had been going on for months. Secret meetings, hotel rooms, stolen moments when I wasn't around. And I had never suspected a thing. My best friend. The man who was supposed to stand beside me tomorrow. The man who had helped me pick out the ring. The man who had told me I was making the best decision of my life. Lying to my face the entire time. The phone vibrated again. Can you sneak away tonight? I swallowed hard, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it hurt. They weren't even done. Not yet. Not even with less than a day before I became her husband. They were still planning to meet. Still making a fool of me. Still treating me like I was nothing. The rage inside me twisted into something sharper, something more dangerous. I could feel it burning through me, a need, a hunger, not just for revenge, but for control. I had been played, used, humiliated, but they didn't know I knew, and that meant I had the advantage. I looked up, forcing my expression into something neutral, just as he walked back, grinning, holding 2 drinks. My best man, my best friend, the liar, the traitor, the man who had been with my fiancée behind my back. Here you go, he said, sliding the glass toward me, completely oblivious, completely relaxed. I stared at him for a beat too long, barely resisting the urge to grab him by the collar and slam his face into the bar. Instead, I forced a smile, a slow, deliberate one, my mind already racing with a plan. Thanks, man, I said, my voice perfectly steady. I was just thinking, we should make tonight unforgettable. He laughed, clinking his glass against mine. That's the plan. And he had no idea what was coming. I raised my glass, clinking it against Nick's, forcing a grin that felt foreign on my face, acting like I wasn't seconds away from snapping his neck. He had no idea that I had his phone. No idea that I had read everything. That I knew everything. And the sickest part? He was still looking me in the eye like a friend. Still calling me bro. Still acting like tomorrow meant something. Still pretending to be the guy I could trust more than anyone. My stomach churned as I took a slow sip, buying myself a moment to push down the anger, to think. This wasn't just about pain. This was about power. And if they had been playing a game behind my back, I was about to play one right back. I set my glass down, leaned forward slightly, like I had a secret of my own. You up for something crazy tonight? Nick smirked, tilting his drink. Always. I exhaled slowly, pretending to hesitate, to build suspense, to make it seem like I was about to let him in on something wild. No bachelor party, I said. No strippers, no clubs, no drama. But I was thinking one last night. No rules. Just me, you, and whatever trouble we can find. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Trouble? Something unforgettable, I said smoothly, my voice casual, easy. Something we don't tell anyone about. His smirk deepened, his posture relaxing, because he thought he was safe. He thought I was still in the dark, still the idiot who trusted him, still the guy who had no clue his best man was screwing his future wife. I glanced down at my watch, playing into the act. Give me an hour. Meet me at the docks. We'll take my boat out, have a few drinks, really send this night off right. Nick laughed, shaking his head. Now that sounds like a bachelor party. I forced a grin. Exactly. I clapped him on the shoulder, my skin crawling at the contact, then stood, my stomach twisting as I turned away. He had no idea. He thought we were just going to party, but I had something else in mind. I walked out of the bar, my fingers itching to break something, my blood boiling, my thoughts a tangled mess. The messages kept replaying in my head, each one cutting deeper, each one a reminder of what I was about to lose. I had spent 5 years loving Emma, believing she was my future, planning our life together, and this entire time, she had been planning something else. I pulled out my phone, my breath sharp, my pulse hammering, and opened our chat. She had sent me a message earlier, something simple. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Love you. My chest tightened. What a joke. I started typing. Come over. I need to see you. I hit send before I could second-guess it, before I could let myself spiral. I needed to look her in the eye. I needed to see how well she could lie when she knew I was watching. The response was immediate. Of course. Be there soon. I stared at the little heart emoji, while rising in my throat. She was so good at this. Too good. And that scared me more than anything. By the time she knocked on my door, I had convinced myself that I could do this, that I could play along, pretend I didn't know, let her talk, let her lie, let her dig her own grave. I opened the door, and there she was, my bride, dressed in one of my old hoodies, her hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes bright with something that wasn't guilt. No hesitation, no nerves, just love, fake love. I swallowed the disgust crawling up my throat and pulled her in, wrapping my arms around her, pressing my lips to her hair, whispering, I love you. She melted into me, and I almost lost it right there. I pulled back before my rage could show, forcing a small, tired smile. Long night, I muttered. Just needed to see you. Emma cupped my face, her thumbs brushing over my jaw. You okay? Her voice was soft, concerned, like she actually cared. I stared at her, trying to find something real in those eyes, trying to see if maybe, deep down, there was a flicker of regret, of hesitation, of remorse. But there was nothing. Nothing but love for a man she had already betrayed. I exhaled slowly, nodding. Yeah, just excited for tomorrow. Her smile widened, her hands trailing down my arms, settling against my chest. Me too, she murmured. It's going to be perfect. Perfect. I forced a chuckle, shaking my head. I still can't believe you picked Nick as the best man. I joked, watching her reaction, watching for the flinch, the hesitation, the tell. Nothing. Just a laugh, soft and warm. He's your best friend, she said easily. It had to be him. My stomach twisted. She was so damn good at this. I tilted my head slightly, keeping my voice light. You two ever had a thing? Her expression didn't change. Not even a little. She just shook her head, leaning into me, pressing a soft kiss to my neck. Of course not, she whispered. You're the only one, baby. Always. I barely held myself together. I smiled, pulling her close, because I needed to feel her lie against my skin. And as she melted into me, my mind was already setting the final trap. Tomorrow, she would stand at the altar. Tomorrow, she would walk down the aisle. And tomorrow, in front of everyone, I was going to destroy her. The morning of my wedding felt surreal. The sun was rising, the sky clear, the air warm, and everything about it should have been perfect. But it wasn't. Not for me. Not after what I knew. My hands were steady as I adjusted my tie in the mirror, my face calm, my expression unreadable. Today was the day Emma thought she was getting everything she wanted. But today was the day she was going to lose everything. The plan had formed in my mind the second I saw that message on Nick's phone. Every detail, every move, every word carefully chosen. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't break down. I wouldn't be the fool standing at the altar while everyone pitied me. No, I would be in control. I would make sure this was her humiliation, not mine. I checked my phone, reading the message I had sent to Nick an hour ago. Meet me outside the chapel before the ceremony. Need to talk. No response. He had probably been too busy sneaking into Emma's room for one last secret moment before she became my wife. The thought made my stomach churn, but I forced the anger down. Not yet. Let them enjoy their final minutes of deception. It was almost over. The venue was buzzing when I arrived. Guests filtering in, photographers setting up, my family smiling, unaware that everything was about to change. My mother hugged me, her eyes bright with happiness, telling me how proud she was, how she always knew Emma and I were meant to be. Meant to be. What a joke. I smiled back, thanked her, played my part. Jason and Ryan, my other groomsmen, stood nearby, laughing, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. And then, finally, I saw him. Nick. He was standing near the entrance, looking every bit the perfect best man, dressed sharp, relaxed, the picture of loyalty. The man who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. He caught my eye, grinned, lifted a hand in greeting. Like nothing was wrong. I walked toward him, my steps easy, my heartbeat steady. He clapped a hand on my shoulder as I reached him. Big day, man, he said, his voice light, like he wasn't sleeping with my fiancée. You ready? I stared at him for half a second too long, then nodded. Yeah, I said smoothly, but we need to talk. His grin faltered slightly, but he recovered fast. What's up? I glanced around, making sure no one was paying attention, then gestured for him to follow. We stepped around the side of the chapel, out of view, the sound of guests chatting fading behind us. I turned to him, my face unreadable. I saw your phone last night. The shift was immediate. His body tensed, his smile stiffened, his eyes flickered with something sharp. What do you mean? His voice was cautious now, careful. Good. He was nervous. He should be. I pulled out my own phone, tapped the screen, and held it up. The message from Emma. The proof. His eyes locked onto it, his breath hitching, his fingers twitching at his sides. I don't know what, don't, I cut in, my voice low, calm, deadly. Don't lie to me. Silence. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair, his expression shifting, calculating. Ethan, he started, his voice dropping. Listen, man, it's what? I asked, tilting my head. A mistake? A misunderstanding? A joke? His jaw clenched. It's complicated. I laughed, quiet and sharp. No, Nick. It's simple. You were sleeping with my fiancée behind my back. He didn't deny it. He just sighed, his face tightening, his eyes flicking to the side like he was already looking for an escape. Coward. I stepped closer, my voice dropping lower. Tell me how long. He hesitated. Ethan, how long? He swallowed hard. Then, finally, he whispered, a year. I didn't move, didn't react. A year. An entire year of my life wasted on a lie. An entire year of them sneaking around, laughing at me, pretending to be loyal while betraying me in the worst way possible. My hands curled into fists, but I didn't hit him. Not yet. And Emma? I asked, my voice even. What's her plan? Nick hesitated again, but he knew there was no point lying now. She said she'd marry you, but eventually, she'd leave. That it wouldn't last. My throat burned. So I was just, what? A placeholder? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. I wasn't going to lose control. I was going to destroy them both. I stepped back, exhaling softly. Thanks, Nick. His eyes narrowed. For what? I smiled. for telling me everything I needed to know. And then I walked away, because now it was time for the final act. I walked back inside the chapel, my pulse steady, my breathing slow, my mind razor-sharp. I had everything I needed. The truth, the lies, the proof. Nick had cracked faster than I expected, spilling out everything, giving me the missing pieces to this twisted puzzle, confirming what I already knew but still wished wasn't real. Emma never planned to stay. She never planned for this to be forever. I was a placeholder, a convenient distraction, a way to keep up appearances until she was ready to leave. And Nick, my best man, he was the one she really wanted. The rage inside me had settled now, no longer burning, no longer chaotic. It was ice cold, focused, controlled, because today wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. The chapel was packed now, guests filling the pews, smiling, chatting, oblivious to the disaster about to unfold. My parents sat near the front, my mother dabbing her eyes, emotional, proud. My father sat beside her, stiff but approving. Emma's parents were just as composed, her mother fixing the lace on her dress, whispering something that made her laugh. She was glowing. The perfect bride. The perfect liar. I walked down the aisle slowly, nodding at guests, shaking hands, playing the part of the nervous groom. Nick stood by the altar, his expression tight, strained, but he didn't look at me. Coward. He was already bracing for the fallout, already feeling the weight of the mistake he had made by confessing. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. Because nothing could stop what was coming. Then, the music started. The doors opened. And there she was. Emma, dressed in white, veil flowing, the picture of innocence. If I didn't know the truth, I'd believe it. But I did know. And as she walked toward me, every step deliberate, every smile practiced, every glance choreographed, I felt nothing. No love. No sadness. Just satisfaction. Because she thought she was about to say, I do. But I was about to say something else. She reached me, her hands soft as she took mine. Her eyes locked onto mine, searching, maybe sensing something beneath the surface, some shift in the way I was looking at her. But she didn't know. She couldn't know. The officiant cleared his throat, smiling warmly. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. His words blurred into the background. My heartbeat slow, steady, waiting for the perfect moment. Emma squeezed my hands gently, as if grounding me, as if she could pull me back into the illusion. Too late. Then it was time. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. One perfect, stretched-out moment of stillness. Then, I let go of Emma's hands. I do. A murmur swept through the crowd, confused, amused, some guests chuckling, thinking it was a joke, a groom nervous at the altar. But I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I turned, scanning the crowd, watching as realization slowly started to creep in. Emma's fingers twitched at her sides, her breath catching. Ethan, she whispered, her voice just for me, a warning, a plea. I turned back to her, exhaling slowly. I can't marry you. Dead silence. I let the words settle, watching the way her face shifted, the way her expression wavered between shock and panic, her composure cracking for the first time. She breathed, forcing a laugh, trying to recover. Ethan, what are you? I held up a hand, silencing her. Then, I turned to the crowd, my voice clear, steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. I can't marry a woman who's been sleeping with my best man. Gasps. Murmurs. A ripple of shock tearing through the chapel, heads turning, whispers growing, tension exploding. Emma's face drained of color, her mouth opening, but no words coming out. Nick stood frozen beside me, his face a mask of horror, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. They had never expected this. They had thought I would be blind until the end, that I would never find out. They had underestimated me. I pulled my phone from my pocket, turned the screen toward the audience, scrolling through the messages, the proof, letting them see what I had seen. Gasps turned to outrage, murmurs to outright shock. I turned back to Emma, her eyes wide, her breath shallow, her entire body trembling. How long? I asked, my voice quiet now, just for her. How long were you planning to keep this up? Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were real. Ethan, please, we can talk. We are talking, I interrupted. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. I tilted my head, watching her crumble. Isn't this what you wanted? A big, unforgettable moment? Nick took a step forward. Ethan, man, let's just shut up, I snapped, turning toward him, my voice like ice. You don't get to speak. You don't get to say a damn thing. Not after this. He flinched, his jaw tightening, but he didn't argue, because he knew I was right. I turned back to Emma, exhaling slowly. You know what hurts the most? I said, my voice softer now. I would have done anything for you. I would have given you everything. I shook my head, and none of it was enough. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Nothing she could say would fix this. I let the silence stretch for a moment, watching her break. Then, finally, I stepped back. You deserve each other, I said simply. And with that, I walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't stop walking. The second the words left my mouth, the second I tore everything apart in front of everyone, it was over. The murmurs behind me swelled into full-blown chaos, guests gasping, family members rising from their seats, confusion and shock twisting through the air like a storm. I could hear Emma's sharp intake of breath, the way her world collapsed in real time, the weight of reality finally slamming into her. I could hear Nick cursing under his breath, probably trying to salvage what couldn't be saved, probably looking for an excuse, a way out. But there wasn't one. Not this time. This time, I was the one who got away. I stepped out into the sunlight, inhaling sharply, my body still wired, adrenaline still burning through my veins. My mother's voice rang out behind me, desperate and confused, but I didn't stop. Jason and Ryan were on their feet now, catching up, their footsteps fast, their voices tight with disbelief. Ethan, what the hell just happened? Jason demanded, grabbing my arm, stopping me just before I reached the parking lot. You tell us you're getting married, we show up, and then you blow it up in front of everyone? What the hell was that? I exhaled slowly, running a hand over my face, forcing myself to focus, to ground myself. She was cheating on me, I said simply, with Nick, for a year. Ryan blinked, his jaw tightening. What? Jason took a step back, rubbing his face, letting out a low whistle. Damn, he muttered. And you found out today? I shook my head. Last night, I saw the messages on his phone. They were still planning to sneak away. Even after all this. Even today. Ryan swore under his breath, his hands curling into fists, his face darkening with rage. That son of a, it's done. I cut in. I said what I needed to say. They can have each other. Jason exhaled, shaking his head. I mean, man, you could have handled that differently. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Yeah? How? By pretending I didn't know? By smiling through the wedding, saying vows to a woman who was already planning her exit? I shook my head. No, they played their game. I just ended it. A loud commotion behind us made me turn. The doors of the chapel had burst open, and Emma was stumbling outside, her face pale, her veil half falling off, her hands trembling as she tried to reach me. Ethan, wait. Her voice was raw, panicked, desperate, but I just stared at her, feeling nothing but an empty, aching satisfaction. She wasn't sorry. She was just sorry she got caught. Please, she begged, stepping closer, her eyes wild, her hands shaking. Just talk to me. I tilted my head, watching her break, watching her shatter under the weight of her own actions. Talk? I echoed. Like how you talked to Nick behind my back. Like how you planned to leave me once it was convenient for you. She shook her head violently, reaching for me, but I stepped back. It wasn't like that, she whispered. Then tell me, Emma. My voice was steady, dangerously quiet. What was it like? She swallowed hard, struggling for words, trying to string together an excuse that didn't exist. But there was nothing, because she had already told me everything in those messages. Nick appeared behind her then, his tie loose, his face pale, sweat beating at his forehead like reality had just crashed into him full force. "Ethan, man," I turned sharply, cutting him off. "Don't." One word. That was all it took. His mouth shut, his hands dropping to his sides, his face flickering with something close to shame. "You don't get to talk to me. Not after this." Emma's breath hitched. "Please," she whispered. "We can fix this." I stared at her, my mind flashing through 5 years of memories, 5 years of believing she was the one, 5 years of trust turned into nothing. And for the first time, I let myself feel it. The betrayal, the disgust, the pure, cold reality that this was who she really was. I shook my head. "No, Emma, we can't." Her face crumpled, but I didn't stay to watch. I turned, walking past her, past Nick, past the guests who were still standing in shock, past the wreckage of a life I almost committed to. And this time, I never looked back. I didn't stop walking until I was off the chapel grounds, my breath steady but my heart still hammering. The weight of what just happened hadn't fully hit me yet. Maybe it wouldn't for a while, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't looking back. I pulled out my car keys, the cool metal grounding me for a second, reminding me that I was free, that I had walked away from the biggest mistake of my life before it could destroy me completely. I slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, exhaling slowly. I needed to go somewhere, anywhere that wasn't here. I needed space. I needed silence. I needed a moment where I didn't have to think about Emma's lies or Nick's betrayal or the way my life had just shifted in an instant. My phone buzzed. I hesitated, then glanced down. Missed calls. Dozens of them. Emma. My mother. My father. A few from Jason. One from Ryan. But I ignored them all. I wasn't ready to talk. I had said everything I needed to. Another buzz. This time, a text. From Jason. "Meet me at the bar. You need a drink." I stared at it for a second before my hands moved on their own, starting the car. Jason was right. I needed a damn drink. The bar was quiet when I arrived, a low-lit place on the edge of town, far enough from the chaos of the wedding venue that no one would come looking for me here. Jason was already inside, sitting at the counter, a whiskey in front of him, his expression unreadable. He didn't say anything when I sat down beside him, just pushed a second glass toward me. "You okay?" he finally asked. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. "Nope." He nodded like he expected that answer. "Good," he muttered. "Would have been weird if you were." I took a slow sip of the whiskey, letting it burn, letting it settle in my stomach, letting it distract me for just a second. Jason exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "Man, I still can't believe that just happened," he muttered. "Like, we were all sitting there, thinking we were about to watch a wedding, and then, boom, you dropped the nuke." I smirked slightly. "Memorable, huh?" He let out a short laugh. "Understatement of the year." He shook his head, glancing at me. "You gonna be all right?" I thought about that for a second. Would I? Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually? Yeah. I nodded. Yeah. Jason exhaled, raising his glass. To dodging a bullet. I clinked my glass against his. To watching them suffer. We drank. But the peace didn't last long. Because 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "Emma." I ignored it. Then, another call. "Nick." I clenched my jaw, gripping the glass tighter, trying to ignore the rising irritation in my chest. Jason saw my expression and sighed. "They're not gonna stop, man." I let out a slow breath. "Yeah," I muttered. "I know." Then, another buzz. This time, a message. From Nick. "We need to talk. You don't know the whole story." I stared at it, my pulse spiking. Jason leaned over, reading it, then scoffed. "The hell does that mean?" I exhaled sharply, debating. I didn't want to hear it, but at the same time, I hated unfinished business. And something about the way he worded it, "You don't know the whole story," made something twist in my gut. What else was there? Jason saw my hesitation. "Don't do it," he muttered. "You don't owe them anything." I knew he was right, but my fingers were already typing. "Then tell me." A response came immediately. "Meet me at the hotel. 1 hour. No Emma. Just us." I clenched my jaw, staring at the screen. Then, slowly, I looked at Jason. I need to know, I muttered. He sighed, shaking his head, but didn't argue. Fine, but I'm coming with you. I nodded, because if Nick had more to say, I was ready to hear it. I didn't want to go. I knew nothing good could come from this. Knew Nick wasn't about to tell me anything that would make me feel better, but the words in his message wouldn't leave me alone. You don't know the whole story. That was the problem. I already knew too much. I knew Emma had been cheating. I knew Nick had been lying to my face for a year. I knew I had made the right call walking away. But what if I was missing something? What if there was a part of this that I still didn't understand? The only thing worse than betrayal was not knowing how deep it really went. Jason drove. He didn't trust me to keep my head straight, and honestly, I wasn't sure I trusted myself either. We pulled up to the hotel Nick had mentioned, a quiet place away from the wedding venue. Like he knew this meeting had to be hidden, like he was preparing for damage control. I spotted him through the glass doors, standing near the bar, his posture stiff, his hands shoved in his pockets. I exhaled slowly, bracing myself, then stepped inside. Nick's eyes flicked up the second I entered, tension flashing across his face. He saw Jason behind me and let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. This isn't a fight, he muttered. I just need to talk. Jason stayed close, arms crossed, silent, letting me take the lead. I walked up to Nick, my body wired tight, my pulse steady but cold. Then talk. Nick hesitated. Not here. Upstairs. Room 214. I exhaled sharply, clenching my jaw. Of course you booked a room, I muttered. Jason shifted beside me, clearly not liking this, but I didn't care. Fine, I said. Let's go. The elevator ride was silent, tension thick enough to choke. Nick's fingers twitched at his sides like he wanted to say something, like he wanted to get ahead of whatever bomb he was about to drop, but I didn't give him the chance. I wasn't here to make this easy for him. I wanted the truth, and I wanted him to choke on it. The door clicked shut behind us, the air in the hotel room stale and tight. Nick ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before turning to face me. Okay, he muttered. Look, you're right about everything. I slept with Emma. We lied to you. We messed up. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Messed up? Nick, you weren't drunk at a party, making one mistake. This was a year. A whole damn year. You were supposed to be my best friend. Nick's face tightened. I know, he muttered. And that's why I need you to understand something. It wasn't just us. My breath stalled. I frowned, my chest tightening. What the hell does that mean? Nick exhaled, looking like he didn't want to say it, like the words were too big. But then he pulled out his phone, scrolled for a second, and held it out to me. I stared at the screen. Messages. Not from Emma. Not from me. From someone else. Ryan. I blinked, my stomach twisting. What am I looking at? Nick swallowed hard. Read it. I did. And every word sent shockwaves through me. Ryan, you think he suspects? Nick, not yet. But he's getting weird. I don't know how long we can keep this up. Ryan, play it cool. He doesn't need to know everything. Nick, you're sure about that? Ryan, yes. He finds out about the rest, and we're all screwed. I couldn't breathe. My fingers clenched around the phone, my heart slamming against my ribs. Ryan, my other groomsman, my friend. He knew. Not just about Nick and Emma. About more. My stomach churned, nausea rising. What the hell is this? My voice was low, sharp, dangerous. Nick hesitated. Ryan knew about me and Emma from the beginning. But it wasn't just that. There were others. My body went rigid. Others? Nick exhaled, rubbing his face. Ethan, Emma didn't just cheat with me. She cheated with Ryan too. The air left my lungs. My hands shook. My mind scrambled for something to hold on to. Something that would make this less real. But there was nothing. Ryan, my friend. Another person I trusted. Another person who had smiled at me, stood beside me, acted like my brother while stabbing me in the back. I forced myself to breathe, to think. How long? Nick hesitated. I don't know for sure, but longer than me. Longer than a year. I closed my eyes, rage crawling up my spine. My entire body felt like it was going to snap, my hands tightening into fists, my breathing sharp, uneven. Ryan was worse. Nick had been bad enough, but Ryan? He had been hiding in plain sight for even longer. I thought back to the times he had told me Emma was the best thing that ever happened to me. How he had been there through every argument, every doubt, every moment of weakness where I had questioned if I was good enough for her. And the whole time, he had been with her too. I exhaled, forcing myself to stay steady. Why are you telling me this now? Nick swallowed. Because I already lost you. I know that. But you deserve to know who else is standing in the wreckage. I stared at him, my entire body cold, my mind running in 1,000 directions at once. Ryan, Emma, Nick, all of them. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was an entire conspiracy. And suddenly, walking away wasn't enough anymore. Everything inside me went still. The rage wasn't hot anymore. It wasn't explosive. It was cold. I stared at Nick, his face tight, his body tense like he was waiting for me to break, waiting for me to swing, to scream, to lose control. But I didn't. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. I wasn't going to give any of them the chance to feel like this was some emotional moment where we could talk it out, where they could explain away what they had done. They had already made their choices. Now it was my turn. I handed Nick's phone back, my fingers steady, my face unreadable. I hope it was worth it, I said, my voice low, even. His throat bobbed, but he didn't respond. Because we both knew the answer. I turned to Jason, who had been silent this whole time, watching. His jaw clenched so tight, I thought he might break a tooth. Let's go. He nodded immediately, already moving. I was halfway to the door when Nick finally spoke. Ethan, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. What? There was a pause, a hesitation. What are you going to do? His voice was uncertain, cautious, like he knew something was coming, like he was afraid of it. I didn't answer. I just walked out. The second we stepped into the elevator, Jason exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. Holy shit, he muttered. Ryan? Ryan? I nodded, jaw tight, my mind moving at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Yeah. Jason shook his head, still trying to process it, but I wasn't interested in processing. I was interested in ending this. By the time we reached my car, I had already made my decision. I'm not done, I said. Jason turned to me, frowning. Ethan, they played me, I continued, my voice sharp, steady. For years. They lied, they smiled. They stood beside me like nothing was wrong. They think they won. I inhaled slowly, my grip tightening around the steering wheel. But they don't get to walk away from this clean. Jason watched me for a long moment, then sighed, nodding. All right, he muttered. What's the move? I didn't hesitate. We destroy them. I spent the next hour making calls. Not to Ryan. Not to Emma. Not to Nick. To everyone else. Friends. Family. People who had been at the wedding. People who knew them. People who wouldn't be on their side once they knew the truth. I sent screenshots. The messages. The proof. The entire disgusting timeline of their deception. No explanations. No context. Just the truth. And then I called Ryan. He answered after 2 rings, his voice casual, like he wasn't expecting anything. Yo, man, what's up? I smiled. Check your messages. There was a pause. Then, a soft buzz as he saw what I had sent. The silence stretched. Then, Ethan, let me explain. I laughed. No, Ryan. Let me explain. You're done. You, Emma, Nick, all of you. Everyone knows. Your parents? No. Your coworkers? No. Your girlfriend? I let that sink in. She definitely knows. His breath caught. Ethan, please. Don't beg. I cut in. It's pathetic. More silence. Then, finally, he whispered, You ruined me. I smiled wider. No, Ryan. You did that all on your own. I hung up. 1 down. 2 to go. Emma was next. Her phone rang twice before she picked up, her voice frantic, breaking. Ethan, please just listen. Why? I asked. You never listened to me. She exhaled sharply, struggling. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she whispered. I loved you, Ethan. I really did. I laughed, shaking my head. No, Emma. You loved lying to me. You loved having everything your way. And now? My voice dropped. Now, you have nothing. She let out a choked sound, half sob, half breath. Ethan, please. I hung up. 2 down. 1 left. Nick. I didn't bother calling. I just sent a single message. You were supposed to be my best friend. Instead, you made yourself my enemy. Enjoy the consequences. No response. But I knew he saw it. And just like that, it was done. Jason sat beside me, exhaling sharply. Damn, he muttered. That was brutal. I nodded. They deserved worse. He didn't argue, because he knew I was right. I leaned back in my seat, staring out at the city, my chest rising and falling in steady, even breaths. For the first time in days, months, years, I felt free. The weight of the lies, the betrayal, the anger, it was all gone. Because I didn't need to hold on to it anymore. They had played their game, and I had just one.